everybody. My name is Lori Miller. I run the group with Frida and Lori and my husband Steve. And Barbara helped out today. Thank you, Barbara. So I'm so excited. This is the biggest group we ever had. It was a sellout. And just really excited. Before I introduce our wonderful speaker, I have a little letter here that I wrote for our group, for Chef Michael and Matt, suggesting it's not a petition for organic food on the menu. So if you want to read the letter and sign this would be wonderful. Not a petition, just a suggestion. The other thing is we have other groups, 2 other speakers are coming. So that should be on your seat if you want to see them and register for them. 2 great events. But now I am so excited. Our speaker today is a Harvard and MIT trained physician who is redefining the landscape of cognitive health. Dr. Josh Helman holds degrees in biochemistry from Harvard and the University of Cambridge and is a dual board certified in emergency and lifestyle medicine. He currently serves as medical director of the Hippocrates Health Institute and currently leads the Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America as Chief Medical Officer. A pioneer in longevity and plant-based healing, he is also the host of the Alzheimer's Breakthrough podcast. Please join me in welcoming a true leader in the field of regenerative medicine, Dr. Josh Helman.
Thank you for that warm introduction. And can you hear me okay in the back? Sure. Awesome. So let's dive in. The message here is that there's hope, and I'm going to try to explain some of the concepts, and obviously at the end open it up to questions. So, and this is very personal because my own grandmother Eileen got Alzheimer's when I was a teenager. So I saw firsthand how this affected not just her, but actually my parents' generation, because they're thinking, wait, this is happening to Grandma Eileen today. What is going to happen to us in 20 or 30 years? So the cool thing is, as a teenager, I was like, all right, what can I do about this? I started studying biochemistry as a teenager. And it's fascinating. What I learned there, most of it hasn't changed. I'm still using it today to help prevent and reverse Alzheimer's and other brain disorders. So more about me. You just heard all about me. I basically moved back down here to South Florida 2 years ago with the intention of opening up new centers to reverse Alzheimer's, and I've done that. So we've got Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America up in Palm Beach Gardens, it's on Donald Ross, so 10 minutes from here. I also have Brain Power Clinics, which is down in Boynton Beach, and actually more than that. So my focus is education. That's why I have a weekly podcast called Alzheimer's Breakthrough, as you mentioned. But my background is pretty diverse. So in addition to the 2 degrees in biochemistry, I actually worked in a fasting center in Northern California for a few years called True North, where people would spend lots of money and all we would serve them is water. But it worked. It reversed their chronic diseases. Okay, so, and then I have real world experience reversing Alzheimer's and other brain disorders in Tampa, Florida, where I worked for 6 years. And, all right. And then if you ever want to find me on social media, those of you on social media, Green Brains MD, and yes, if I only had a green brain, it'd be nice. Okay, and as you mentioned, the weekly podcast on reversing Alzheimer's, and I'll put up these websites at the end. I'm not standing in the way of anyone up here? Okay, good. All right, and so literally I've given this lecture to thousands of people. Here are some of the reactions that I've received. About 1 in 3 people who hear this think that what I'm describing just isn't possible and that I don't know what I'm talking about. I can assure you I do. I've been doing this for over 8 years. What's exciting is it's actually a lot easier for me to do this now than it was 8 years ago because of many of the new technologies and treatments available. And we'll go over some of those. And the key, I think, is to layer all those different treatments together. So just some quick disclaimers. This is not medical advice. Definitely consult your own doctor before making any changes. But if your doctor doesn't feel comfortable with this topic, then consider consulting with me. I'm not endorsed by any government agency like the FDA or FTC. I'm not being paid by the food industry, including Big Sugar or Big Pharma. But at the end, I'll talk about a new FDA-approved treatment for compassionate use to reverse Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is a devastating disease in that it takes away people's dignity and sense of self. And I'm going to be sharing my opinion, but the cool thing is we're seeing more and more studies being published, randomized controlled clinical trials demonstrating that just with lifestyle alone, you can reverse Alzheimer's in 20 weeks. This one is from Dean Ornish. This one was published in 2024. And then the Pointer study was 2025. And then at the very end of last year, you can't see it on there, but in December of 2025, basically there's another randomized controlled trial showing that Alzheimer's is reversible. And let me just, the effect, this hasn't been published yet, but they're showing improvements much more than the two amyloid antibody treatments that I'm not a big fan of because of side effects. So, no, not everyone reads these studies, but it's cool to see that this is validation. It isn't just my opinion. I gave a online summit in 2023 called The Truth About Alzheimer's. We had over 30,000 attendees from around the world, 40 interviews with Alzheimer's experts, and if you're interested, you can find it at drjosh.com/program. Okay. So Alzheimer's is a clever thief in that it steals not just from you, but it steals the very thing you need to remember what's been stolen. So let's start with the basics. What in the world is Alzheimer's disease? It's a progressive neurologic disorder that affects memory, thinking, and behavior. It's not just memory. And it turns out in this country, it's the most common cause of dementia in older adults. And how is Alzheimer's different from dementia? So Alzheimer's, there are many different types of dementia. It just so happens that Alzheimer's is the most common type, about 70% of cases here. But there are many other causes of dementia, including vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, and Parkinson's dementia. And Alzheimer's is named after this German doctor, Dr. Alois Alzheimer's, from over 100 years ago, when the custom was that doctors would name diseases after themselves. That's the story there. And if you run into someone who says, "Oh, I completely understand the brain," they don't know what they're talking about. I think some people have said it's the most complex organ in the universe. I haven't been to the whole universe. I agree, though, it's extremely complex. You're dealing with billions of neurons and trillions of synapses. So how many types of Alzheimer's disease are there? Let's make this interactive. How many people think one type? How about 3 types? How about 5 types? All right. How about more than 5 types? Good. Some of you are awake. That's good. Willing to vote. All right. All right. So recently there was by the way, I think it's more than 5 types, but recently there was a paper published saying that there are 5 types of Alzheimer's based on 419 patients looking at over 1,000 different types of proteins in the CSF or cerebral spinal fluid collected from those 419 Alzheimer's patients. And I don't think it's really important to understand what the 5 subtypes are as much. What I find exciting is for each subtype, there's a potential treatment. So for example, subtype number 1 is too much tau protein in the brain, which is a disaggregated set of proteins in the brain and the potential treatment for that type would be antibodies against tau, as an example. So how common is Alzheimer's disease? In this country, we're actually looking at 7 million people. In the state of Florida, we're looking at 700,000. It's huge. 1 in 3 seniors dying with dementia. And it's not just the United States. China is expected to have 40 million people living with dementia and Alzheimer's by 2050. Now, the Chinese have been known to fudge their numbers a little bit, but you know what? Even if it's only 20 million, that's bad. And why are the Chinese getting Western diseases like Alzheimer's? Because they're starting to adopt Western lifestyles. Okay, so, and we see Alzheimer's in the news, it's common. Famous people like Gene Hackman, one of the causes of his death was Alzheimer's. And in the green, the dark green here, unlike many other chronic diseases where the numbers are going down, actually the amount of dementia and Alzheimer's is headed up. All right, so what are some early signs of dementia? You can see subtle short-term memory changes, difficulty finding the right words, changes in mood, apathy, difficulty completing normal tasks, confusion, difficulty following storylines, a failing sense of direction, being repetitive, and struggling to adapt to change. And just to be clear, we're looking for a change in behavior or these changes, but obviously not everyone who is confused has dementia. So what are the consequences of dementia? You have loss of independence, you have loss of self, you have loss of contribution. There's a financial burden regardless of whether people say, hey, I'm having issues here, let's get help, or if people are in denial. And then finally, and very important, the burden on caregivers. I've seen so many caregivers get ill from, I don't think as humans we're designed to as an adult, take care of another adult 24/7 all the time. So let's make this interactive. What do you all think are some causes of Alzheimer's disease? Sugar, sure.
Pollution.
What's that?
Pollution.
Pollution, yes. Lifestyle, yes. Genetics, and what was over there? Glyphosates, heavy metals, exactly correct.
Dehydration?
So dehydration and environment, yes.
Lack of sleep.
Not enough sleep, definitely.
Stress.
And stress. And inflammation. Great. I mean, I feel like, and? Genetics, definitely. So I feel like you've actually given my lecture for me, so you have a smart group here.
Don't leave.
Don't leave, okay. All right, so, but if you look at how does Alzheimer's disease actually happen, what's the pathophysiology? You have amyloid plaque in the brain between neurons, you have tau tangles inside of neurons, you have inflammation causing damage to neurons, and then eventually the nerves die, and we call that neurodegeneration. So how many different causes of Alzheimer's disease are there? In most cases, they're between 30 and 200, and they're different from case to case. So the thought that we're gonna find one drug or one therapy that's gonna fix all 100 causes, probably not going to happen. And then here are some of the categories of different causes. You have, as many of you have mentioned, genetics. Endotoxins are produced by bacterial cell walls, also called lipopolysaccharide or LPS. You've got glycotoxins. Xenotoxins are man-made chemicals that didn't exist hundreds of years ago that are toxic to people and our brains. You've got vascular problems, trauma, infections, autoimmunity, where your immune system is actually attacking different parts of your brain. You've got malnourishment, not enough mitochondria, atrophic signaling, not enough stimulation, and then what's called catabolic signaling. And everyone's pie graph or different causation amount is different. All right, so here's some interesting causes of Alzheimer's. It turns out from the studies and from the models, sleep disorders are the #1 cause And we'll talk a little bit more about sleep. Next, inflammation is a very common root cause for Alzheimer's. And then infections that have been linked to Alzheimer's include herpes virus, pneumonia, syphilis, Lyme disease, mold, and gum or dental disease. And anatomically, it's not surprising. The mouth and the brain are right next to each other, so if you have a rip-roaring infection in your gums, it's not hard to imagine that those bugs could travel up to the brain. All right, so how long does it actually take for Alzheimer's disease to develop? We're actually looking at 30 years or longer, and it actually may not be symptomatic for the first 20 years. What are some of the risk factors for Alzheimer's? As Dr. Oz has said, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. All right, and the earlier you detect Alzheimer's, the more you can do about it. And I just put this section in. Unfortunately, our current health insurance system, if you look at Medicare, does not normally focus on prevention. And so for example, Medicare only pays for services that are reasonable and necessary for the diagnosis or treatment of illness or injury or to improve the functioning of a malformed body member. What I find is many of the tests and the treatments are not covered by insurance like Medicare yet. So specifically for Medicare, there's currently no statutory dementia prevention benefit, there's no mandated coverage for a biomarker-based prevention, and there's no metabolic brain optimization benefit. And then in terms of risk factors, it turns out genetics is huge. It's not just ApoE or looking at ApoE4. There are literally hundreds of genes I'll go over with my patients that can contribute to either increased risk or decreased risk of brain problems. Lifestyle, someone mentioned things like diet, exercise. You want to stay away from tobacco and alcohol. And then medical conditions, for example, if you have diabetes or heart disease, especially if it's not controlled, that is a huge risk factor for developing Alzheimer's. And exercise is key not only to physical health, but to peace of mind. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. And yeah, I talked briefly about genetics. There are hundreds of genes that affect brain health. I test with a company out of Texas called Intellex DNA. Again, it's not just ApoE4, it's just a mouth swab. It takes a month. And then what I love about it now is like it's personalized medicine. I can make recommendations based on the unique mutations that a specific patient was born with. Okay, and as Hippocrates famously never said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I say that because I studied ancient Greek in high school and college, so when I saw this quote, I'm like, oh, let me find that in the original Greek. You're not going to find it, it doesn't exist. So you might say, well, Hippocrates meant this in someone's writings. Yeah, he may have, but this is a modern quote from someone else. All right, so what is the ideal food? Yes, stuff like that. Vegetables. You want whole plants. You want to avoid animal products. You want to avoid adding salt, oil, and sugar. And you definitely want to eat some raw foods, because here's some of the issues with cooked foods. When you cook foods, you produce what are called advanced glycation end products. They actually age you prematurely. With the heating, there's something called the Maillard reaction, the browning, and certainly moist cooking is preferred to frying. And yes, it even applies to tofu and olive oil. Okay, so here's an example of different amounts of AGEs, or these glycation end products, in different types of foods. And you can see things like bacon, butter, chicken, beef, tuna have high amounts. Olive oil has some, but if you're eating green beans, apples, carrots, and bananas, there's almost none. And the next constituent in food that causes inflammation is LPS, or endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide. The more LPS someone has, you end up seeing more inflammation in the brain. And this is just a graph. Well, actually, this shows the amount of this LPS in different types of foods. You can see huge amounts in macaroni and cheese, pork and beef, lobster, even milk. Milk has some. And plants, normally you don't see any. And this is important because if you actually measure the level of LPS in the blood of different patients or different people, young, normal people, 0. As people get older, it goes up to maybe 150. With mild cognitive impairment or early Alzheimer's, it goes up to 400. By the time people hit dementia, it's gone up to 700. It's high. Okay, and then here's another chemical. Has anyone here heard of arachidonic acid? Yeah, that's awesome. So arachidonic acid is an inflammatory chemical that's present in different types of foods, including high amounts in egg, bacon, chicken, beef, pork, tuna, but there's 0 in fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. So the bottom line is you are what you eat. If you're eating mainly things that have low levels of these inflammatory things, your brain and your body will be less inflamed. And then, unfortunately, we see our modern Western diet is very high in added salt, oil, and sugar, which is not good for our health because all 3 of those things can do damage to our blood vessels, including the blood vessels to the brain. The brain is the most vascular organ. So here's an example, the amount of pounds of sugar added in the diet per person per year. If you go back hundreds of years ago, there's very little, maybe 5. But in the last 100 years or even 150 years, it's been like a straight line up. To today, we're dealing with over 100 pounds of sugar per person per year. Not good. Same thing with oil. If you look at the amount of oil added in the American diet over the last 100 years, in the green here, it's actually gone up 20 times. And I've given this talk, and people say, well, but I think the diet's about the same now as it was 100 years ago. It's not. It just isn't. And so in general, adding oil is not good, and certainly seed oils are not good, but when we're talking about, like, is this food good or bad, the question you should really be asking is compared to what? So for example, vegetable oil, normally it's not good, but compared to butter, it's definitely better for your health than eating butter, as an example. Okay, and then salt consumption also has seen a huge amount of increase based on using salt for taste and also for preserving foods. Around 1990, we realized, wait, why are so many people getting high blood pressure? Maybe it's all the extra sodium we're adding. And so there has been a pullback a little. People aren't adding as much salt to their diet, but still, if you look today, we're still much more salt added and consumed compared to 100 years ago. And it's not good for the health of our blood vessels. So what does the government say about the risks for Alzheimer's? Number 1, they say not enough aerobic physical activity. I agree. High blood pressure, cigarette smoking is not good for your brain, diabetes. And I think this is an example of industry capture, excessive alcohol use. Unfortunately, alcohol is a neurotoxin that kills brain cells. I think the government put that there just because they had to, because of lobbying from the alcohol industry. You have depression, obesity, and hearing loss. So today, if you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you go to your neurologist or your primary care doctor. What are some of the treatments that would be offered to you? One might be a prescription drug called Aricept or donepezil, which increases the amount of acetylcholine in the brain. Acetylcholine is a very important neurotransmitter. And let's see here. Another one is NMDA, inhibitors like Namenda. And when I say it's both of these medicines they're not going to reverse Alzheimer's normally, they'll just slow down the gradual worsening. And then recently they may offer these antibodies to amyloid, which I am not a fan of, Leqembi and Kisunla, I'm not a fan because up to a third of patients end up getting brain bleeds or brain swelling. Yes?
Are those pills or are they IV?
So
The last one?
the last two are IVs.
IVs, okay.
Yeah. And let me just, so the flip side is, many of my patients are on, instead of medicines to increase acetylcholine, they're actually taking medicines that will decrease the amount of acetylcholine in the brain, called anticholinergics or even antihistamines. And some of them are over the counter, like Benadryl. And I know certainly in the back you can't read that whole list, but what I find is often patients are on many of these, and what we'll do is we'll substitute out for one of these is something from the same class, but that doesn't have the anticholinergic or antihistamine effect. And let me be clear, if one of you is having an allergic reaction, I definitely want you to take Benadryl to stop it. What I'm talking about here is you do not want to be on these drugs every day for weeks, months, and years, because eventually that's doing damage to your brain. So another class of medications associated with dementia and Alzheimer's are statins that are used to lower cholesterol. Statins will cause coenzyme Q10 deficiency, damage mitochondria. The good news is for most people, if they get dementia or muscle cramping with statins, when you stop it, it's reversible. But I gave this lecture in Jupiter a few months ago. There's a gentleman in the back who said, I used to be a professional banjo player. I can no longer play the banjo. I can't remember the music because I was started on statins. I lost my memory. I stopped and it never came back. So with stories I hear like that all the time, I'm like, there are safer ways to lower cholesterol than statins. So I personally am not a fan. And what I just shared with you about drugs, prescription drugs, I made a TikTok with one of my business partners, Robert Love, and millions of views. But here's what's funny about it. I woke up one day and saw this article in the Daily Mail about me. Harvard doctor reveals unexpected prescriptions. Yeah, that's me right over there. The funny thing is that reporter never talked to me. So I love journalism in 2025 or 2026 is you don't actually have to interview anyone. You just have to watch Instagram or TikTok. So, okay, so here's some more medications associated with dementia. Things like opiates, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole. You've got benzodiazepines like Ativan, Xanax, and Valium. And you've got tricyclic antidepressants like Elavil and SSRIs like Prozac, Paxil, and Zoloft. And am I saying you should never be on these medications? No, I'm not. You know, if you're having surgery, yeah, definitely dull the pain with opiates. If you're going through a very stressful time this week, sure, I could say taking some Ativan, or if you're going through a procedure. But what I'm talking about is you do not want to be on these drugs for weeks, months, and years, because long term it will do damage to your brain. So specifically with benzos, like Ativan, if you take it for 3 to 6 months, it's associated with the risk of developing Alzheimer's increases by 32%. If you're on them for more than 6 months, it goes up to 84%. Now, if you end up being on a benzo like Ativan for over a year, it can result in cognitive impairment that will continue beyond stopping the benzo for up to 3.5 years. All right, so that's the bad news. What about some good news? What are some medications that prevent dementia? Well, have any of you heard that men who take Viagra have lower odds of Alzheimer's? And I bet you would have also applied to women too. Had anyone heard that before? No? Okay. Well, now you know. It's a great audience. All right. So how in the world does Viagra prevent Alzheimer's? It turns out it reduces amyloid plaques. It enhances blood flow to the brain via nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a gas that opens up blood vessels. It's neuroprotective. It reduces the tau tangles in the brain. And here are the recommended daily doses to start. These are prescription medications. it's a lower dose than you might take for ED, but I recommend most of my patients be on something like this for the purposes of brain dementia prevention. Also for women, true. Now there are other ways to increase nitric oxide, like chewing vegetables or supplements, things like that. All right, so what's the problem with the existing options that your neurologist or primary care doctor may recommend for Alzheimer's? Well, the amyloid antibodies that were approved a few years ago, I don't like the side effects, which include brain bleed and brain swelling. In fact, the drug companies have a solution though. Instead of calling them side effects, they make them sound like a song. They call it ARIA, which stands for amyloid-related imaging abnormalities. And why imaging? Oh, if you want to take these drugs that maybe a third of the patients end up getting brain bleed or brain swelling, you're required to have a CAT scan or MRI of your brain every month. So again, I'm not a fan. All right, so what are some of the non-traditional treatments I am offering to my patients? Number one, lifestyle. Getting people enough sleep, getting them to exercise, reducing their stress, smart supplementation, and in terms of diet and nutrition, focusing on plants and avoiding inflammatory foods. Physical activity. I tell my patients to exercise every single day. Now, not all of them can go out and start running, but whatever they can do, I want them to do something, because when you exercise, your brain releases something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that stimulates the growth of new neurons and new neural connections. And then our brains are designed to be engaged, to be active, and it's not just Sudoku or a crossword puzzle. What's actually more effective is to do something new, go to a new place, learn a new musical instrument, learn a new language, for example. And then sleep. It turns out the reason sleep is so important is that when you sleep, your brain is able to clear out the amyloid plaque and consolidate memories. But if you're not getting to the deep sleep, your brain can't do that. So it turns out it's the deep N3, non-REM sleep, that's the most important for the restoration. And it turns out for every 1% decrease in the amount of N3 sleep, there's a 26% increased risk of dementia. So for most of us, when we were 20 years old, we actually got 2 hours of this slow wave N3 sleep. By the time we were 65, it went down to 30 minutes. And then for any of us who are 80 or older, it's generally below 15 minutes.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Is there another name for N3 sleep?
Sure. It's and it's interesting because there are different conventions in this country, in Europe, etc. So N3 stands for non-REM.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
How can you measure that?
Yeah, how do you know if you're getting?
Sure, great question. And I heard Oura Ring. I think the Oura Ring is great. The problem is it's not as sensitive as formal sleep studies. So what I would do is I would get a formal sleep study and then also wear the Oura Ring and see, because the Oura Ring or the Apple Watch or whatever device, they'll tell you how much you had. I just don't believe that number until it's correlated with the formal sleep study. So we have a new device at Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America that increases the amount of N3 sleep by 44%. And I've seen it. I've seen it help patients. I've seen it help me. I started getting vivid dreams after using this device. How does this is a device that goes under a mattress. I didn't make up this name. It's the SWDS 2003 slow wave deep sleep device. So another name for N3 is slow wave sleep. This is what the unit that you turn on looks like, but it actually is, you put it under the mattress, and the way it works is it stimulates 4 different points of your spine to do two different things. Number one, to release melatonin, which many of you know helps trigger sleep. And the other is to increase, it stimulates vagal tone, and the vagus nerve also will trigger parasympathetic and sleep. If you're interested, and Tammy will be here at the
That's
end.
who was on the phone.
Oh.
Security wouldn't let them in.
Okay. Hopefully she'll be here and can give you more information, but the website for Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America is atca.ai, and again, we're pretty close by. I'm Donald Ross. Okay, so stress. What I find for many of my patients with Alzheimer's, what ended up pushing them over the edge into Alzheimer's was a very stressful occurrence. And obviously, you're not going to be able to reduce all stress in your life, but the key is to manage it and only to focus on useful stress. But no, I don't want you all to spend all day in bed. Yes, there's a question in the back.
Question about the statins that you said
Sure.
cause it. Can that be replaced with like a citrus bergamot?
Sure. I love bergamot, which is the type of fruit. That's one strategy to lower cholesterol. Another one is just not to eat as much cholesterol in your diet. There's no cholesterol in plants, and there's a ton in animal products. Okay, so the greatest healing therapy is friendship and love, and social engagement. I love that we're come together with this event, but as people, we're designed to be in a tribe around other people. So I get very worried if one of my patients lives by himself and doesn't really have any friends or family around. So social engagement is key, and no one should face Alzheimer's alone. There are definitely resources out there. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether you're 20 years old or 80 years old. The key is we want to keep the brain active. And many of you mentioned environmental factors as one of the causes of Alzheimer's, and things like air pollution and lead are definitely risk factors for Alzheimer's. And the good thing is, the good news is, we can actually get these toxins out of you, even if you've accumulated them over a lifetime, and especially the fatty toxins that literally can have a half-life in you of 30 years or longer, such that unless you're actively trying to get them out of your body, that they will stay there. Okay, so, what's that?
How are you getting them out?
So one way we're getting them out is a device or a procedure called blood filtration, or TPE, which stands for therapeutic plasma exchange, where you basically put an IV in one arm, you put the toxins out, and then the other arm you put back albumin. It takes for about 3 hours. It turns out the gut health and brain health are linked, even though anatomically they're not in the same part of the body. But if I have someone with a bad gut, if I fix their gut, often their brain will get better. Hormones are very important. For example, thyroid hormone. If a patient does not have enough thyroid hormone, often their brain cells will not be working. And I'm often asked this, so I just put it in the presentation. My top 5 favorite supplements for preventing Alzheimer's. One is omega-3 fatty acids, and specifically, I'm looking for a supplement that has DHA, DPA, and EPA. And I personally like the algae oils that are out there. Okay. I'll warn you, it can be hard figuring out how much omega-3 you're actually getting. You need to do a calculation, and I understand if you have someone with dementia, they may not be able to do this, but basically the conundrum is omega-3s are expensive, and what companies will often do is they won't make it easy to tell how much DHA, DPA, and EPA omega-3s are there. Like in this case, you're dealing with 820 milligrams. Let's just say, oh, there are 1,600 milligrams of omegas. They won't tell you that, oh, by the way, these are omega-6s or omega-9s. They're not as beneficial as the omega-3s. So that's just a warning that you need to do some calculations. This is the one that I take. It's called Nordic Naturals Algae Omega. And one of the reasons I like it is, I'll show you on the next slide. is it has a QR code on the box, and if you put that in your phone, you can actually test the lot that you're buying or taking to see. You put in the number, and then you actually get to see the certificate analysis and see that it actually has what it claims it has in terms of the amount of omega-3s, and that it doesn't have any heavy metals, and by the way, that it's not oxidized or rancid. And another hint, if you are going to buy omega-3s, keep them refrigerated. Yes, I know they don't normally come refrigerated, but it turns out the omega-3s have lots of double bonds. It's just a lot easier at room temperature for those bonds to become rancid and oxidized as opposed to in the refrigerator. Okay, number 2, anyone heard of lion's mane?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, I love lion's mane. Specifically, the dose is 1,000 milligrams a day. And yeah, there's studies showing improved cognitive function. The one I take is called Roar Lion's Mane with Dr. Love, and the discount code there is just Dr. Josh, DRJOSH. Okay, so the next one is,
What do you think about the gummy ones?
I think gummies are fine. The challenge with gummies is, like, to get 1,000 milligrams, you have to eat a lot of gummies, and the components of the gummies are normally sugar and things that you don't want a lot of. So I think gummies are good with kids, yeah. All right. So the next one is nitric oxide, the gas nitric oxide. I like nitric oxide supplements to open up blood vessels. Definitely eat and chew your green leafy vegetables and beets to open up blood vessels. I also take, in addition to that, I take something called Cardio Miracle, which is a powder you mix in water that is designed to last over 24 hours, 24 to 36 hours. The thing is, if you chew on some celery or green leafies, yeah, that's going to increase your nitric oxide for a couple hours. But unless you're chewing some greens every couple hours, I like taking something like Cardio Miracle. And it's cardiomiracle.com/Dr. Josh. And the next one is creatine. And what we know now is creatine not only helps build muscle, it also is a neurotransmitter. It helps brain function. So I recommend starting at 5 grams a day, but you may want to go up to 20 grams a day. The one I take is called Alkaline on Fullscript. You can find that on my Fullscript store, drjosh.com/Fullscript. And then the next one is NMN. Anyone heard of NMN before? Got a few of you have it. It stands for nicotinamide mononucleotide. It increases NAD. As a true biochemist, where one of the rules is NAD. Basically, what these molecules do is that they turn back your biologic clock. The ideal dose is 1 gram a day, but everyone is going to have a different requirement. And if you want to learn more, just go to drjosh.com/NMN. And Tammy, thanks for joining us. We talked about you briefly with the sleep mat. Okay, and it's NMN. It's not M&Ms.
Darn.
M&Ms are not health promoting, even on Halloween. And yeah, artificial flavors. Don't put that stuff into your body. All right, and then a bonus one, number 6, is Hinokiol or Hono Pure. That's the structure of it. It's a extract from magnolia bark, anti-cancer, neuroprotective. It actually decreases inflammation. It decreases amyloid in the brain. It's anti-inflammatory. The dose is 1 capsule twice a day. And this is what it looks like from Econugenics. And you can also get this at drjosh.com/Fullscript. Okay, and yep, there it is, drjosh.com/Fullscript.
So you take these, not when you have Alzheimer's, but as a preventative?
Correct.
Okay.
But I also have my Alzheimer's patients take them too.
Take the same thing.
But and it's a lot easier to prevent than to reverse.
Right.
Definitely.
Makes sense.
All right, so as Seth Rogen said, we're all in this together in the fight against Alzheimer's. hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. So here are some of the insights of when I worked up in Tampa for 6 years at a center that doesn't exist anymore, but it's called Spinagal Wellness. It turns out that IV medicines are much better for assuring adequate delivery than pills. It's important to do detoxification first. We would use things like IV glutathione, IV phosphatidylcholine, also called Plaquex, which is a natural detergent, along with colonics. We would do colonics twice a week. We would use something called IV exosomes to regenerate the brain. The cool thing is, this technology is advanced. We're now using the next generation called RSF. And we would use, for patients with infections in the brain, we would use IV antibiotics and IV supplements when indicated, but we would do that after doing the detox. If you do it first, you can actually make someone worse, because imagine someone has parasites that have heavy metals inside of it. You kill the parasites, great, you kill the parasites, but it's like a bomb going off. You've just released all these toxins, and then you wonder, well, why this patient who walked in, they're in a wheelchair now? That doesn't look good. I only made that mistake once. I got the patient back walking again, but this is a very humbling field, and I find most doctors have never even heard of this stuff. Okay, and then we would use functional studies like PET scan of the brain with neuroquant imaging to identify and localize where in the brain the pathology is. So you've seen this slide already, the problems with the existing anti-amyloid antibodies like Kisunla and Leqembi. What is the solution? What are we doing for our patients? Number one, instead of targeting the amyloid plaque, it turns out that amyloid is the body's way to fight infection and also for healing. So instead of ripping out something that's actually part of the healing process, we target the underlying inflammation by going after a molecule, a protein called galectin-3. Some of you may have heard of lectins being present in plants, but guess what? Lectins are also in people. It's part of our immune system, specifically galectin-3. And galectin-3 is produced by macrophages in the brain, and we see high levels of galectin-3 in many different diseases, not just Alzheimer's, but things like asthma, zoster, rheumatoid arthritis, and interstitial lung disease. Here is a graph. I know it's a little bit confusing, but the galectin-3 molecule has normally it's a pentamer, 5 different arms to it in blue there. And what happens normally is it will bind to the amyloid, which are the little brown balls there, and in time will form plaques, like amyloid plaque. The cool thing is we have a medicine now in red that's an antibody that specifically blocks the galectin-3, so that slowly the amyloid plaques are dissolved and our patient's thinking gets better. So this is a brand new FDA-approved drug for compassionate use that almost no one has heard of. It's currently in the phase 2 study. I'm one of the investigators. And comparing it to Leqembi, which goes after amyloid beta antibody, we go after galectin-3. We're seeing 0 cases of cerebral edema, whereas with Leqembi, they're seeing 12.6%. We're seeing 0 bleeding in the brain. They're seeing 17.3%. We're seeing a 63% reduction in the dementia scale. They're only seeing a 27%. I've been giving this drug for a couple years now. I'm seeing signs of reversal after just 1 month. It's given intravenously once a month for 6 months. With Leqembi, they're not seeing reversal after 1 month. I'm also seeing improvement trends within 3 months. They're not. And this is really important. Safety. We've given this to over 400 patients, over 2,000 doses. We have seen 0 serious side effects. No brain bleeding, no brain swelling.
What is the drug called?
It's called BP001 or TB006.
But it's not on the market yet.
Well, it is available for compassionate use. There's an application process, but it's called, the FDA has a program called expanded access. But it's true, it's not, it hasn't been through all the stages of approval. The challenge is it may take another 6 or 7 years, and because we're seeing 0 side effects and such good results, the government, the FDA has said, look, you're allowed to give this to patients as long as you give them informed consent about what's going on.
Does that feel like a neurologist would prescribe it?
In order for a neurologist to prescribe it, they'd have to know about it. Most neurologists don't know about it. I've been offering it for 2 years. I'm not a neurologist, I just happen to focus on this area. There are 5 types of dementia that is indicated for. There's Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's dementia, but we can use it in other types of dementia too. Here is one of my patients, Susan. Let's see if the audio here works.
What have you been doing with this so far?
I've been okay. I do feel a little bit more organized, and my
Can you turn it up?
On your computer?
This is the most.
I have more
You can't see.
ability to do the things that I want to do.
Please say your name and how old you are.
Susan Goldstein, 75.
What have you noticed over the last 6 months?
It's been great. It's been great. There's definitely been an incline. And I feel great afterwards, like I do now. Better in conversation.
Thanks.
Because I used to lose track of thought. Remember that? In telling the story. And I don't seem to do that anymore. I might lose a word here and there, but I don't. I come back to the story.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and she didn't talk about it, but actually in the middle of her treatment, Susan went through major back surgery. And with general anesthesia, which is definitely toxic to the brain, but we still got her back. So, yeah, it's great to give people their brain and their life back. So my vision is to combine all the different modalities to decrease the risk of Alzheimer's. We see in the press, Brian Johnson is popularizing the TPE, the blood filtration, the total plasma exchange, where again, taking blood out of one arm, getting rid of the toxins, and the other arm putting back in albumin. And I just have a couple videos from some of my patients who we're seeing amazing effects just with this TPE blood filtration for brain fog and dementia.
So, Suzanne, thanks for being willing to share with us. This is your 6th TPE. Tell us what your experience has been like so far.
Yes, Dr. Josh, thank you so much for all your support. I was struggling for over a year, not knowing what was happening.
Okay.
And then we met. I was diagnosed with the mold. I had 5 types of mold, 3 of them dangerous, 2 of them critically high. And I had been struggling for over a year with my energy, with my focus. And after the first TPE, the next morning I woke up feeling for the first time in a very long time like I didn't have to struggle to get out of bed. And since between the TPE and some of the other recommendations, I feel much better. My energy is much better. My focus is much better. And very happy. Thank you.
Cool. How's your brain fog now?
No brain fog.
It went away.
Yeah, the fog went away. The energy is back. The focus is back. Using the TPE and the oil that you recommended. And now we're going to work on the memory.
Awesome. And this is Suzanne's mom, Celia. English isn't her first language, but she also saw great improvement with this blood filtration.
And you're just about to get your 6th TPE therapeutic plasma exchange. Can you explain how you feel now compared to the start?
Well, like I told you, doctor, after the second treatment, it felt like a veil has moved away from my mind. Since my memory has greatly improved, and so has my energy. I used to work until very late, not necessarily physically, but mentally.
Sure.
And lately, by 6, 7 o'clock, I was like too tired. I can now go on until midnight with no problem.
That's great. So you have more energy. How about memory? Do you remember things now that you had trouble before?
Well, for after the second time I had sorry that I forgot a lot of names.
Sure.
Like if they had erased from my mind. And after the second treatment, I could remember names that I had. I could like, I'm in the art world.
Sure.
So I could like see the work, but I couldn't remember the name of the artist.
Right.
Now I remember the name of the artist. It has greatly improved.
That's awesome. And if you can explain what the process is like, is the TPE uncomfortable, or well, how would you describe it?
I wouldn't say that everybody in the office is extremely pleasant,
Okay.
very accommodating. I normally watch a movie while I'm having it, so I
Okay.
enjoy it.
Nice.
And I do feel very tired that evening,
Okay.
but the next day I'm fine.
Oh, that's awesome. Celia, thank you so much for being willing to share with us.
No, thank you, doctor.
So, Alzheimer's may steal memories but not love. So in summary, how can you prevent and reverse Alzheimer's? Eat plants, change your lifestyle, take supplements and medications that actually get to the root causes of what's causing the dementia, Alzheimer's, or what it is you're treating, and consider this anti-galectin antibody. As Paulo Coelho says, the challenge will not wait, life does not look back. A week is more than enough time for us to decide whether or not to accept our destiny. And here's my contact information. And Tammy, were you able to bring some brochures or get some cards?
Still printing the brochure.
Okay, we're working on that. Let's see if I have anything else. Well, I'll have you take photos. Okay. Again, I have a weekly podcast on reversing Alzheimer's, over 50 episodes so far. And you can find that at drjosh.com/podcast. If you, some of the information I presented here today, you can find at drjosh.com/program. And that's it. All right, let's open up the Q&A.
Blood is processed during one TPE.
TPE. Yeah, so we're actually, it normally takes about 3 hours, but it depends on the size of the person and how good the IV is. Here's the deal. Obviously you can't, so the average person might have 5 liters of blood. You can't take 5 liters out, that's not compatible with life. So normally we're processing, say, 2.5 liters. It depends on the size of the person.
And then what about the amount of treatments? Is that different for every
Right,
person?
so what we found and what's also been published out there is normally our Alzheimer's patients will need 6, but in terms of prevention, if you got someone who's like, hey, I feel really, I feel fine, even I've had patients who feel fine, it's like, yeah, doc, let me try it. It's like, wow, things opened up. So people don't even understand the potential of their brain and other functions. So you see people like Brian Johnson promoting it for anti-aging. It does turn back the biologic clock because you remove toxins, and toxins age you prematurely. So if you can get those toxins out of you, and the sad thing is we see huge increases in the amount of toxins in the environment. As an example, plastics double in the environment every 14 years, and plastics have entered the food chain. I mean, just look at all the food that's processed in plastic. A lot of the processed foods are processed in plastic, and then those microplastics end up in the food, and then when you eat the food, Unfortunately, the plastics end up in the brain. Let me put in a plug for organic food. The reason you want to eat organic is you don't want the toxins associated with the plastics. Yes?
You mentioned the lectins. I read Dr. Gundry's books and read where he talks about lectins being something to avoid.
Right.
And a lot of vegetables, legumes, things like that have lectins. And I guess the way you prepare them can reduce the amount. But do you feel that there are certain fruits and vegetables we should be avoiding?
Yeah, great question. So I think Dr. Gundry overstated some of that. And I think he's backtracked a little bit in some of his recent podcasts or publications. So, but you're exactly right. There are some vegetables that have lectins, and that's why, for example, I recommend if you're going to eat potatoes, cook the potatoes. Please don't eat raw white potatoes. There are lectins in there that get removed if you cook them. But the flip side is to say avoid lectins. Well, guess what? We have, as humans, we have lectins in our immune system. How can you avoid? It's like saying avoid water. I mean, so yeah. Thanks for that. Yes.
Where can the TPE be done?
Sure. So let's talk about it. TPE is actually it's a established medical procedure that's been done for over 50 years. So you can today or anywhere you can find TPE being done for patients next to death's door with certain types of cancers where the blood gets really thick. They're in the intensive care unit. But what I'm talking about here is not reversing blood cancers. I'm talking about using it to reverse Alzheimer's. So the challenge is, even though most academic large hospital has the wherewithal to do TPE, if you go to them and say, hey, I would like TPE for my brain problem, they'll look at you and laugh at you. So the issue is using a trusted, tried and true technology for a different usage. Did that answer your question?
No, because you didn't say where.
Where? So we can do it in our clinic on Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America, which is just on Donald Ross Road. Yeah, and I think what you'll find is a year from now, you're gonna find TPE centers everywhere. But right now, you're exactly right, it's hard to find for what we're talking about it, to use it for brain rejuvenation and reversing Alzheimer's. And let me take you next.
The sleep device that you were talking about earlier.
Sure.
Does that work for insomnia?
Yeah, so the question is, the sleep device, the sleep mat, can that work for someone with insomnia? And yes, I've seen it commonly help with insomniacs, but I would say, if someone's got insomnia, the first thing I would do is get a sleep study. But yeah, so I've seen good results and Tammy's definitely the person to talk to if you want a sleep mat too. All right, I'll take you in the side.
Can that also be used by people who have pacemakers or electronic things on your body that be affected?
Yeah, so let's see here. I would avoid it with pacemakers because yeah, I don't know, Tammy, do you know offhand, is the sleep mat safe for someone with pacemakers?
I was told it was.
Yeah,
But
then
I always verify.
Yeah. So I think it is, but the challenge is there are different types of pacemakers or different types of devices.
Exactly.
But what I would say is, if someone had a pacemaker placed in the last few weeks, no, I wouldn't start it there. Someone who's had a pacemaker, for a couple of months, it should be fine.
We have them in the office, and I can call the manufacturer, literally the inventor directly, and ask them the questions that are needed.
Okay, yes.
I was told there's a test to see if you are a candidate for Alzheimer's or not. Is that the case?
There's a test if you're a candidate for it.
To see if, you have no chance of getting Alzheimer's, or you do have a chance of getting
Right,
Alzheimer's.
so I think that could be many different tests. They could be talking about doing the genetics test for ApoE, looking for ApoE4. Apolipoprotein E4 is a protein that transfers lipids into the brain. So they could also be talking about, there are now new blood tests looking for amyloid and tau protein. And then we have up in Alzheimer's treatment centers, we have something called a serogram, which is a non-invasive, you basically put a helmet on the scalp and it looks for amyloid and tau protein in the brain. But to my mind, I think it's important for you all to know your ApoE4 status, whether you have it or not. But just to be clear, to my mind, that's not the only gene. There are literally hundreds of genes that you want to know. But you want to know if you're a higher risk of Alzheimer's because you can actually do something about it. Let's say you happen to find out, oh, I do have the ApoE4 gene. It's not, oh, woe is me. Oh, it's like, I better make sure I'm getting enough deep sleep. I better make sure I'm exercising every day and that I'm eating low inflammatory foods and that I'm socializing and I'm not smoking and doing things to hurt my brain. Yes?
So you had said a lot of doctors, a lot of MDs don't know any of this. My question is, if you're not lucky enough to live in Florida, close to the Alzheimer treatment center or have property, if you find a functional or integrated medical doctor, would they understand about TPE? Would they know about this for Alzheimer's?
So if you find a functional integrative doctor, you've got a better shot, but not, I meet functional doctors who are just out of training, who don't know any of this. I will say I do Zoom consults with patients all around the world.
Fly in.
Yeah, and they often fly in. But to your point, just because someone calls himself a functional doctor, I mean, I feel lucky. I've got 2 degrees in biochemistry, 2 degrees from Harvard, and I've been seeking this out for decades.
So,
Yeah.
one other question.
Yeah.
I assume you publish studies, you're publishing things. Aren't there researchers who are seeing it, and why isn't it trickling down?
Well, I shared at the beginning of the lecture, I mean, you've got the Pointer study, you've got the Finger study, you've got Dean Orange's study, you have Dale Bredeson's study. So it's being published, but it's not mainstream, and let's talk about it. The reason it's not popular, the reason you're not hearing about it in the news is look at the media. Media is based on advertising. Where are the dollars in healthcare? It's big pharma. Big pharma is not behind any of the things I've talked about yet. I mean, maybe TB006 will get picked up by big pharma in 7 years, but until then, no, you just follow the money. That's why you haven't heard about it. Yes?
Do colonics mess up your microbiome? Because that's what my doctor said.
Sure. So colonics will mess up your the bugs in your gut, but it will also, another thing that would do that is fasting. So when I worked at True North and had people water fast for up to 40 days, the whole point of water fasting is to kill and reset the bugs in your gut. So the point is, the reason I would recommend colonics twice a week for my patients I'm trying to detox is I'm trying to do a reset. I mean, technically your doctor's correct. I find most doctors don't understand. Well, I'm a fan of it, and yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
If you don't want to do the 40-day water fast, holy shit.
Yeah.
What's the
that was the maximum. The cool thing is there is no minimum. So let's say you're doing nothing right now. The first thing I would say is, you know what? Start skipping breakfast. Skip one meal. It's like exercise. Let's say there's someone in here who right now does 0 exercise. You know what? Start slow. 5 minutes a day. Do some push-ups and sit-ups, and then build from there. It's very personalized. It's very individualized. And let's say after skipping breakfast, it goes okay. Then maybe stop eating at 6 p.m. You know, maybe only eat between noon and 6 p.m. Or maybe only fast on the weekend when you control your schedule. It's very personal. So, yeah. All right. Yes.
Hi. I was diagnosed with black mold in my body. So I took care of the house, did all that. I've been taking IVs. Is that something that I would want to do?
It is. So here's the challenge with black mold. Black mold it's a biological weapon. It's well studied by the military in this country and other countries. the reason it's so devastating is the black mold toxins, including trichothecene. These are fatty toxins that once they get into your brain, they go into, and they can travel through the air in through your eye. Once it gets into fatty tissue, it's not coming out often for 30 years or longer unless we're actively doing something to get it out. And these toxins, they specifically target your mitochondria, the very part of the cell that normally removes toxins. So it's like a Trojan horse. Once it goes in, it doesn't leave. So the exciting thing is I've seen good results, I showed one of the videos, of using TPE, therapeutic plasma exchange, to filter those toxins out. But the other thing I'll do is I'll add the IV phosphatidylcholine detergent to push the toxins out of your brain just before we filter it out to maximize the amount of the black mold toxin that we get out. And these black mold toxins are devastating. The reason the militaries are interested in it is that they kill and destroy rapidly turning over cells like the ones in your gut. What I find challenging is many of my patients with black mold toxins, it'll also go into their gut and they won't be able to absorb food, medications, or supplements until we get them out of their system. So to answer your question, yes, I would definitely.
So I want to come see you.
You definitely want to come see
Okay,
me.
I have another question.
Sure.
Two more questions. You were saying, I was watching, she was taking, I guess you were taking blood out of one arm, putting it in through the other one.
True.
I've had a radical mastectomy 40 years ago, and so I can't use this side.
Right.
Is there any way to do that?
Sure. So what we can do, two options. One is it takes more time. We can take out of one side and then give back on the other. The other option is to, for example, use the leg, one leg and one arm.
Okay.
So there are options.
Okay, this is a really tough one. Is
Okay.
that my husband had a stroke, a hemorrhagic stroke 11 and a half years ago.
Okay.
He's still here, but he's definitely declining, and he sleeps a lot. I don't want to do something if it's not gonna make a difference, I guess, you know.
My message is there's always hope, but the more advanced, the more difficult.
It's very advanced.
But let me be like some of the advanced patients, we need like 3 people to hold them down even to draw blood. Are we at that stage pretty much? Yeah. So what I would suggest, instead of doing invasive things, let's try some non-invasive things like the sleep mat that we could just get him to sleep on a mat that he's not going to see.
Right.
I think that would be an easier approach.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
I think she has cards.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. It sounded very interesting. I was just curious, you know, in regards to either your lecturing or speaking with friends that might be neurologists. Are they receptive to some of your treatments? Are they interested in learning more, or they just close it down, or it depends on them?
I think it depends on the neurologist. There are some who are very interested, who are coming on to put Alzheimer's treatment centers on our board, and then there are others who are completely against it. But I would say that the average neurologist is completely overworked, exhausted. They don't have time to research new treatments, whereas I go to conferences and I've got 50 new treatments to offer. But I don't blame them. They're overworked in a system, and I talked to a woman this morning who basically has to wait, I think, 6 months to see a neurologist. I mean, it's craziness out there. And then they find me, and I'm able to plug them in. So, yes.
I have one question about wine.
Okay.
We talked about heavy metals and how they, have to spray on the grapes and then it gets into the wine. Is it better to drink organic wine as opposed to?
Yes, it's better to drink organic wine or eat organic foods, but I'm not a fan, if you're worried about your brain, I'm not a fan of wine, because we know that wine, the alcohol in the wine will destroy brain cells and increase your risk of cancer. But if you're drinking alcohol-free wine, I understand. It's addictive. It's addictive. No question. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. So let's talk about coffee briefly. I think I smelled some coffee earlier. So the deal with coffee, it turns out that coffee is the #1 source of antioxidants for the average American. So if I tell people just stop drinking coffee because it's very acidic and has toxins in it like acrylamide that hurt your brain, but the problem is if I don't, at the same time of getting them to stop coffee with all these antioxidants, if I don't get them eating lots of fruits and vegetables with lots of antioxidants, I've actually hurt them. So it's a complicated topic, but yes.
What do you think about coffee compared to koalas?
Yeah, so I prefer it, and for my patients, I recommend water enemas or colonics. To my mind, I understand coffee is definitely a stimulant. I have some of my patients who are addicted to it, where if they stop the coffee enema, they're just not able to go anymore. But I see that there's a role for it. To my mind, I just think water is a lot safer. Yes?
You just mentioned it, I'm curious if you can quickly explain it. So obviously if you take a antibiotic, you're messing up your microbiome, and that's medicine that's killing all the good bacteria. How is water, which seems so harmless, if you're just using that sort of as an enema, how would that have the same impact?
Well, it wouldn't have the exact same impact, but it definitely will have an impact. You're changing the transit speed. You're changing the environment, and to my mind, normally what I'm most concerned about is making sure the bacteria in the gut are good once I get my patients to eat a plant-forward diet with lots of fiber. So it turns out one of the reasons it's very important to eat plants is that it has fiber. The average American only gets less than 15 grams of fiber a day. As humans, we're designed to have over 100 grams of fiber. So to my mind, during a transition period, I'm not really worried about the microbiome. I am at the end product. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, just because I understand microbiome controls so much about disease.
Right.
And obviously, you don't want to mess with it. You take an antibiotic, and you bring it in.
Right. But here's the other perspective. Today we're dealing with all these different toxins, these xenotoxins that didn't exist hundreds of years ago. So it's not like hundreds of years ago, it's today, and that's the reason I think it's justified to use water, whatever method we can, to get these fatty toxins out, because often they're not coming out on their own, unfortunately. Let me take your next.
What type of probiotics do you recommend? There's so many different types these days, it's confusing, it's like who's
Sure.
both of them. What do you recommend?
Yeah, so when it comes to probiotics, it's interesting. I'm normally not recommending lots of probiotics. I mean, I do like fermented foods, but it's kind of interesting. When I'm doing genetic analysis on my patients, some of my patients have a mutation in a gene called ABCB1. And it turns out that ABCB1, that gene, is responsible for shooting amyloid out of cells. So when they have a defect, that increases their risk of amyloid and getting Alzheimer's. So it turns out that the probiotic lactobacillus upregulates the gene ABCB1. So normally in the patients I have with that genetic mutation, I'm recommending lactobacillus to upregulate. That's really the only time I'm recommending probiotics.
Wow. And also testing that you do for like toxins and things, is that all through blood tests or like the probiotic thing?
Sure. So I'm normally recommending for toxins, I'm using urine, and I'm using a company out of California called Vibrant Wellness. Yeah. Let me take you, and then I'll take you.
Just going back to the coffee question, what is your opinion on mushroom coffee versus coffee?
So I like mushroom coffee much better, especially, I mean, I mentioned lion's mane, that's a type of mushroom.
Right, that's what I was asking.
So I would much rather people drink mushroom coffee than coffee from
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back with the plant-based microbiome. I heard sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt with live cultures are all good for the microbiome.
I think that's true. My concern is, at least most of the stuff you buy is often very high in sodium. And we know that sodium will do damage to your blood vessels, but you can make your own. But yes, in general, I'm a fan. I'm not really a fan of dairy, because the dairy will have high levels of the arachidonic acid, the LPS, the inflammatory. So instead of dairy from cow's milk or other animals, I'll recommend plant sources of dairy. Yes?
Question, what do you recommend for protein? It seemed like protein was higher on this, not eat this.
Yeah, so what's interesting is most of my patients, and most Americans, are not deficient in protein. My take on it is that protein today, not 100 years ago, but today, protein is being pushed by the big agricultural companies to push sales of meat, when we know that people who eat lots of protein, it actually causes premature aging. The mechanism is through a gene called mTOR. And again, now maybe 1 or 2 or 3% of people are deficient in protein. You can check by checking the blood for albumin and total protein, and if those are low, then, but for most people, they're actually getting too much protein. But I understand if you're just listening to TikTok or the knowledge there, it's just wrong.
Just thinking about like muscle building, as we age, losing muscle mass and just adding more protein to help.
Right, but my point is, unfortunately, most people, even the elderly, are not deficient in protein. So what they are deficient is fiber. But no one's talking about fiber, because there's no big plant company pushing that. That's why you don't hear about it. Any questions on this in the back?
You had mentioned hormones before. What about bioidentical hormones? Are they a positive or negative towards Alzheimer's?
Yeah, so in general, I am a big fan of bioidentical hormones. And one thing I didn't mention is, if you look at Alzheimer's, twice as many women as men get Alzheimer's. And I think it's because of the lack of bioidentical replacement in terms of menopause. And then you see Alzheimer's develop about 20 years later. I think that's why you're seeing twice as many women as men develop Alzheimer's. So I'm a fan, if you for people who are perimenopausal or early menopause, definitely look at bioidentical hormone replacement. Yeah. Yes?
Sugar versus fruit. Fructose is bad for your brain, correct? Excess. How about fruit? How much fruit can you eat, and is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. So I'm a big fan of my patients eating whole fruits, but not highly processed fructose. So even though industry may say otherwise, ketchup is not the same as tomato, even though tomato is a fruit, as an example.
So any fruit is okay if it's real?
100%.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you look at the response, so number one, if you're eating a whole fruit, you're getting the fiber that most people are deficient in, and you're getting all these other nutrients that you don't get from high fructose corn syrup. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you so much. This was
Thanks.
great.
Dr. Josh is the medical director of Hippocrates. There are magazines that we have on the way out. I'm also going to do a field trip probably on a Saturday to go eat at Hippocrates. If anybody's interested, I will be sending out a group valet notice about that. And maybe you can also get a tour afterwards. I'll try to arrange that if enough people are interested. And I'm just so grateful that I ran into you at Hippocrates, that you agreed to come here. You are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.